I've always believed that the worst storms are the ones you never see coming. The kind that arrive on a Tuesday afternoon in March, disguised as a favor for family. My name is Maxine Winters, and at 65, I thought I'd seen enough of life to no longer be surprised by it. I was wrong. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The Riverside Post Office sat on Main Street, the same red brick building that had anchored our small Montana town for over a century. I'd been coming here since I was a girl, back when old Mr. Peterson ran the counter and knew everyone's business before they did. Now it was his grandson, Tom, who managed the place, and he knew me just as well. That Tuesday, I'd volunteered to pick up some packages for my daughter-in-law, Clara. She'd called that morning, her voice honey-sweet as always. "Mom, Maxine, I hate to ask, but could you grab those boxes from the post office? The baby supplies I ordered? I'm just so exhausted, and Daniel's working late again." She sighed dramatically. "You know how it is with a 6-month-old. I did know. I'd raised 3 children myself, though we'd managed without next-day deliveries and specialty organic everything. But I bit my tongue. Clara was sensitive about comparisons, and Daniel, my youngest son, had made it clear that keeping peace meant keeping quiet. "Of course, dear," I'd replied. "I'll bring them by this afternoon." The March wind cut through my coat as I pushed open the post office door. The familiar smell of paper and floor wax greeted me, along with Tom's wave from behind the counter. At this hour, mid-afternoon on a weekday, the place was nearly empty. Just Mrs. Henderson at the far counter, arguing about postage rates. "Afternoon, Maxine," Tom called out. "Here for the Morrison packages?" Morrison. Clara had kept her maiden name, something that had caused no small amount of tension at the wedding 5 years ago. My late husband, Robert, had taken it personally. I'd tried to see it as progress. "That's right. Should be 3 or 4 boxes," she said. Tom's smile faltered, just for a second. Something flickered across his face. Concern? Worry? It was gone so quickly I almost missed it. "Let me grab them from the back. Give me just a minute." He disappeared through the doorway to the sorting room, leaving me to study the wanted posters on the bulletin board. Mail fraud, package theft, the usual warnings about suspicious parcels. I'd seen these notices 1,000 times and never given them a second thought. Tom returned carrying 2 large boxes, but he didn't bring them to the counter. Instead, he set them down by the back doorway and gestured for me to follow him. "Maxine, could you come here for a moment? Please?" The serious tone in his voice made my stomach tighten. Tom was always jovial, always quick with a joke about the weather or the Broncos. This wasn't the Tom I knew. I glanced around. Mrs. Henderson was still occupied. The lobby was empty. I followed him to the back corner, away from the windows. "What's wrong?" I kept my voice low, matching his energy. Tom looked uncomfortable, his hand rubbing the back of his neck. "Maxine, I've known you my whole life. My grandfather used to talk about how you and Mr. Robert were the finest people in this town. So I'm going to break protocol here, and I need you to understand this is serious." My mouth went dry. "What are you talking about?" He glanced toward the sorting room, then back at me. "These packages, the ones addressed to Clara Morrison at your son's address, they've been flagged. Multiple times, actually. This isn't the first shipment." "Flagged? By whom?" "By our security systems, and by postal inspectors." He lowered his voice even further. "Maxine, do not let these boxes go to your house. Don't take them to Daniel's house either. Not until you see what I'm about to show you." The blood in my veins turned to ice water. "Tom, you're scaring me." "I mean to." He pulled out a tablet from beneath the counter, the kind the postal workers used for tracking. His fingers moved across the screen, pulling up images. "Federal law requires us to X-ray packages that meet certain criteria: weight, origin, frequency, patterns of behavior. These packages met multiple criteria." He turned the screen toward me. At first, I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. The X-ray images were ghostly, gray and white shadows. But Tom zoomed in, highlighting certain areas with his finger. "These boxes are supposed to contain baby supplies, right? Diapers, formula, that sort of thing?" "That's what Clara said. Look here." He pointed to a dense cluster in the center of the box. "That's not diapers. And here, See these uniform shapes? Those are bottles, but not baby bottles. Look at the size, the density. I squinted at the screen. The bottles were small, tightly packed, arranged in careful rows. Around them, padding of some kind, but the bottles themselves were unmistakable. What are they? Tom's jaw tightened. I can't say for certain without opening them, which I'm not authorized to do. But, Maxine, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen these patterns before. The shape, the density, the way they're packed. These are pharmaceutical bottles. Pills, most likely. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of the counter. There must be some mistake. There's more. He swiped to another image. This is from a package 2 weeks ago. Same shipper, same destination. And this one from a month before that. 6 packages total in the last 3 months, all with similar contents. All addressed to your daughter-in-law. I stared at the images, my mind racing. Clara. Sweet, tired, overwhelmed Clara with her perfect hair and her mommy blog and her complaints about how hard everything was. What are you saying? Tom looked at me with something close to pity. I'm saying these packages are suspicious enough that I've already filed a report with postal inspectors. They'll be investigating. But Maxine, you're listed as an alternate recipient on the address. You've picked up packages before. If you take these home, if you deliver them, you become part of the chain of custody. You could be implicated. Implicated in what? Whatever's really in those boxes. My hands were shaking now, trembling so badly I had to clasp them together. Why are you telling me this? Why not just refuse to release them? Because you're a good person, and you deserve to know what's coming. The investigation is already underway. Federal agents will likely visit your son's home within the week, maybe sooner. He paused, his voice softening. And because whatever's happening here, I don't believe you're part of it. But your family is about to be turned upside down, and you need to be prepared. I thought of Daniel, my sweet boy, now 32, and so proud of his little family. He worked 60-hour weeks as an electrical contractor, leaving before dawn and returning after dark. He'd been so happy when Carol was born, so determined to be a better father than he thought Robert had been. That had stung, but I'd understood it. Daniel wanted to be present, available, involved, which meant he had no idea what was happening in his own home. I need to see them, I heard myself say. The real contents? I need to know for sure. Tom shook his head. I can't open them. That's tampering with mail, and it's a federal crime. The inspectors will handle it. Then what am I supposed to do? Go home, say nothing, wait. And Maxine, he fixed me with a hard stare. Be very careful what you say to Clara. If she's involved in something illegal, anything you tell her could be used to destroy evidence, or to create an alibi. The walls of the post office suddenly felt too close, the air too thin. I'd walked in here 20 minutes ago thinking about what to make for dinner. Now I was standing in the ruins of my son's life, and he didn't even know it yet. Mrs. Henderson is finishing up, Tom said quietly. You need to decide right now. Take the packages and risk implication or refuse them and let that refusal send a message back to whoever's watching. Through the window I could see Main Street, the same street I'd walked down for 65 years. The bakery where I'd bought Daniel's first birthday cake. The diner where Robert had proposed. The church where we'd buried him 2 years ago. Everything looked the same. Everything had changed. I'll refuse them, I whispered. Tell them I can't transport them today. Tom nodded slowly. I'll make a note. The packages will be held for the addressee to pick up in person. Will Clara be notified? Automatically. She'll get an email within the hour. Which meant I had perhaps 60 minutes before my daughter-in-law called, confused and annoyed. Before I had to pretend I knew nothing. Before I had to look at my son across a dinner table and hide the fact that his entire life was about to explode. I walked out of the post office on legs that barely held me. The March wind hit my face like a slap, cold and sharp. I fumbled for my car keys, dropped them, picked them up with numb fingers. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Daniel. Mom, can you come by tonight? Clara wants to talk to you about something. Says it's important. I sat in my car, hands still shaking, and stared at that message. The storm had arrived, and I was standing right in its path. The drive home took 12 minutes, but I couldn't remember a single turn. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles ached. Every few seconds, I glanced at my phone sitting in the passenger seat, waiting for it to light up with Clara's call. It came 7 minutes after I pulled into my driveway. "Mom, Maxine? Hi?" Her voice was bright, cheerful, with that slight edge of stress she always carried. "I just got the weirdest email from the post office. They're saying the packages are being held? Did something happen when you went to pick them up?" I closed my eyes, steadied my breathing. Tom's warning echoed in my mind. "Be very careful what you say." "I'm so sorry, dear. I got there and realized I'd forgotten my reading glasses. Couldn't make out the signature form properly. You know how my eyes are getting." The lie came easier than I'd expected. 65 years of honesty, undone in a single sentence. "Oh." A pause. "Well, that's okay. I can grab them tomorrow. It's just, I really needed those supplies. Carol's almost out of the organic formula, and you know how fussy she gets with the regular kind. Formula. Right. That's what we were calling it. I'm sure one day won't hurt," I said carefully. "Daniel mentioned you wanted to talk to me about something tonight?" "Yes. Actually, that's perfect timing." Her voice brightened further, which somehow made my stomach sink lower. "We're having a little family dinner. Just the 4 of us. Well, 5 with Carol. Could you come around 6? I'm making that chicken recipe you like. A family dinner. Tonight." Hours after I'd seen X-ray images of suspicious packages. Hours before federal agents might descend on their home. "Of course. Can I bring anything?" "Just yourself. See you at 6, Mom." The line went dead. I sat in my car, in my own driveway, feeling like a stranger in my own life. My house was too quiet when I walked in. It had been that way since Robert died. Too much space. Too much silence. Too many rooms that echoed with memories instead of voices. I'd raised 3 children here. Now they were scattered, living their own lives. And I rattled around like the last marble in a jar. I made coffee I didn't drink and tried to think clearly. The facts, as I knew them. Clara had been receiving suspicious packages for at least 3 months. 6 packages, Tom had said. All marked as baby supplies. All containing something else entirely. Something that warranted federal investigation. My phone rang again. This time it was my daughter, Patricia, calling from Seattle. "Mom, quick question. Has Daniel seemed okay to you lately?" My heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" "I called him last week and he sounded exhausted. Like, beyond normal new parent exhausted. And when I suggested he take a day off, he got really defensive. Said they couldn't afford it, that Clara's not working and money's tight." Patricia paused. "Are they in financial trouble?" "Financial trouble. Pills in unmarked packages. A daughter-in-law who stayed home with the baby while my son worked himself to the bone." "I don't know," I said honestly. "He hasn't mentioned anything to me." "Well, something's off." And Clara posted on her blog yesterday about finding creative solutions to financial stress. And what does that even mean? She has a blog? "Oh, Mom?" "Yes, it's all about natural parenting and holistic living, and honestly, it's mostly product advertisements. But this post was different, vaguer. It made me uncomfortable. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and did something I'd never done before. I looked up my daughter-in-law's blog. It took me 10 minutes to figure out how to navigate the website. Clara's smiling face greeted me from the header, holding baby Carol against a backdrop of filtered sunlight. The blog was called Morris and Mama, Natural Living for Modern Families. I scrolled through posts about cloth diapers and homemade baby food, each one punctuated with links to products, discount codes, affiliate programs. The comments were full of other mothers praising Clara's dedication, her authenticity, her innovative approaches. Then I found yesterday's post. Patricia was right. It was different. "Sometimes motherhood means making hard choices," Clara had written. "Sometimes the system fails us, and we have to create our own solutions. I've found a community of mothers who understand that conventional paths don't work for everyone. If you're struggling, if you feel alone, if you're looking for alternatives, reach out. There are options you haven't considered. DM me." The post had 63 comments. I started reading them, and my coffee went cold. Thank you for being real about this. Nobody talks about how expensive everything is. DMing you now. I'm desperate. You changed my life. Forever grateful. What had Clara changed? What alternatives was she offering? I was still staring at the screen when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Winters, this is Special Agent Caroline Foster with the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. I understand you attempted to collect packages today addressed to Clara Morrison. I need to speak with you before you have any contact with Mrs. Morrison or your son. This is urgent. Please call me at this number immediately. My hands started shaking again. A federal agent. It was real. This was actually happening. I called the number with trembling fingers. Mrs. Winters, thank you for calling back so quickly. The woman's voice was professional. Clipped. All business. I need to ask you some questions about your relationship with Clara Morrison and your knowledge of packages being delivered to 4782 Pinecrest Avenue. That's my son's address. Daniel. He's married to Clara. I understand. How often do you visit their home? Once or twice a week, usually for dinner, sometimes to help with the baby. Have you ever seen packages being delivered? Specifically packages that Mrs. Morrison receives? I thought back over the past months. She gets a lot of packages. She's always ordering things online. Baby supplies mostly. She says it's easier than going to the store with Carol. Has she ever asked you to receive packages on her behalf? To accept deliveries when she's not home? No. Well, today was the first time she asked me to pick something up from the post office. There was a pause on the other end. I heard typing. Mrs. Winters, I need to be direct with you. Your daughter-in-law is currently under federal investigation for trafficking controlled substances through the U.S. mail. We have evidence of multiple shipments containing prescription medications, specifically opioids and anxiety medications, being sent to her address. These packages are disguised as legitimate baby supply orders. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. That's impossible. Clara wouldn't. She's a mother. She blogs about natural living, which makes her an effective cover. Mrs. Winters, we believe she's running a resale operation. She receives the medications, repackages them, and sells them through online channels and personal networks. The Natural Living blog is likely a recruitment tool. Those comments. DM me. There are options you haven't considered. Does Daniel know? The question came out as a whisper. We don't believe so. Your son works long hours, correct? He's rarely home during the day when deliveries occur? He leaves at 5 in the morning, sometimes doesn't get home until 8 at night. Then he's likely unaware. But Mrs. Winters, we need your cooperation. We cannot move forward with our investigation if family members interfere or warn Mrs. Morrison that she's under scrutiny. Tonight, when you go to dinner, you cannot give any indication that you know about the packages or the investigation. Can you do that? Could I? Could I sit across from my son and his wife, hold my granddaughter, and pretend everything was normal while knowing federal agents were building a case against her mother? What happens if I refuse to go to dinner? That might alert her that something's wrong. Sudden changes in routine, canceled plans, these can trigger suspects to destroy evidence or flee. We need you to maintain normal behavior for just a few more days. Can you do that? A few more days of lies. A few more days of watching Daniel smile at his wife while she committed federal crimes under his roof. What if she asks me to pick up more packages? Refuse politely. Make excuses. But do not, under any circumstances, take possession of any packages addressed to her. That could implicate you as an accessory. After the agent hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, watching the afternoon light fade through the windows. At 5:30, I forced myself to change clothes, to fix my hair, to practice my smile in the mirror. I had to be normal. I had to be the mother-in-law who brought dessert and doted on the baby and asked harmless questions about sleep schedules. I had to forget that I'd seen those X-ray images. The drive to Daniel's house took 15 minutes. Their neighborhood was newer, built on what used to be farmland on the edge of town. Cookie-cutter houses with 2-car garages and small yards. The kind of place young families aspired to. Clara answered the door with Carol on her hip. She looked tired but beautiful, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater. She could have been an advertisement for effortless motherhood. Mom, Maxine, come in, come in. Dinner's almost ready. The house smelled like roasted chicken and herbs. Everything looked normal. Tidy living room. Toys scattered artfully across the carpet. Photos of Carol's first months covering the walls. Daniel emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped with fatigue. But he smiled when he saw me, and my heart broke a little. Hey, Mom. Thanks for coming. We sat down to dinner, the four of us around their small dining table. Carol dozed in a bouncer nearby. Clara served the chicken with roasted vegetables, poured wine, played the perfect hostess. So, she said brightly, once we'd all filled our plates, I wanted to talk to you about something exciting. Daniel glanced at her, surprised. Apparently, he didn't know what this dinner was really about either. Clara reached over and squeezed his hand. We've been talking about our finances, trying to figure out how we can make things easier. And I've been building my blog, and it's actually starting to generate real income. That's wonderful, dear, I said, my voice steady despite the nausea rising in my throat. So wonderful that we're thinking about expanding, maybe turning it into a real business, a consulting service for other mothers who are struggling. She looked at me with wide, earnest eyes. And Mom, Maxine, I was hoping you might want to invest. Be a partner. Help us grow something really special. The room went silent except for Carol's soft breathing. Clara wanted my money. She wanted me invested, literally, in whatever operation she was running. Daniel was staring at his plate, clearly uncomfortable. We haven't really worked out all the details yet, he mumbled. But the potential is huge, Clara continued, her smile never wavering. I already have mothers reaching out to me every day, asking for help, looking for solutions. We could really make a difference, and make a good profit doing it. I looked at my daughter-in-law across the table, this woman I'd welcomed into my family, this mother of my granddaughter, and I wondered how long she'd been planning this moment, how long she'd been grooming me for this exact conversation. How much are you thinking? I heard myself ask. $20,000 to start, just to get the infrastructure in place, the website redesigned, the marketing materials. She squeezed Daniel's hand again. It would mean so much to know you believe in us. $20,000. A fortune. My savings from 40 years of teaching. Can I think about it? I asked carefully. Something flickered across Clara's face. Disappointment? Anger? It was gone in an instant, replaced by understanding warmth. Of course. Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know about the opportunity. We finished dinner making small talk about Carol's sleep schedule and Daniel's latest project. But I could feel Clara watching me, calculating, measuring my reactions. When I left an hour later, Daniel walked me to my car. Mom, I'm sorry about that. The investment thing. I didn't know she was going to ask you tonight. It's all right, sweetheart. We're not really in trouble. Things are tight, but we're managing. I don't want you to worry. I looked up at my son, this man I'd raised, who worked himself to exhaustion for his family. He had no idea what was happening in his own home. Daniel, are you happy? The question surprised him. What? Yeah. I mean, it's hard with a new baby, but yeah. Why? Just checking on you. You look tired. I am tired. He laughed. But it's good tired. It's worth it. I hugged him goodbye and drove home through streets that seemed darker than usual. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed a car parked across the street. A sedan with a man sitting in the driver's seat, barely visible in the shadows. Watching. Waiting. I assumed he was part of the federal investigation, though I didn't recognize him. Watching. Waiting. The federal investigation had begun, and I was caught in the middle of it. My phone buzzed as I unlocked my front door. A text from Clara. Thanks for coming tonight, Mom. Think about the investment. It could change all our lives. Talk tomorrow? I stared at that message, at the cheerful emoji she'd added at the end. Tomorrow, when she'd go pick up those packages from the post office herself. Tomorrow, when everything would start to unravel. I took a screenshot of the message and forwarded it to Janet Reeves before archiving it. I wasn't about to erase potential evidence. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those X-ray images, the neat rows of bottles that were supposed to be baby formula. At 3 in the morning, I gave up and made coffee, sitting at my kitchen table in the dark, trying to understand how I'd missed the signs. Had there been signs? I replayed the last 6 months in my mind. Clara's sudden devotion to her blog, the constant packages, Daniel's exhaustion, his overtime hours, the way Clara always seemed to need something, a favor, help with Carol, someone to cover for her while she ran errands. My phone lit up at 6:30. A text from Daniel. "Mom, can you watch Carol today? Clara has appointments all morning. I'd take off work, but we really need the hours." I stared at that message. Appointments. Or was she going to pick up those packages? Agent Foster's warning echoed in my mind. Maintain normal behavior. Of course, I typed back. What time? 8:30. You're a lifesaver. I arrived at Daniel's house at 8:25. Clara answered the door already dressed, her hair perfect, makeup carefully applied. Not the look of someone exhausted from early morning baby care. "Mom, Maxine, thank you so much. You're the best." She handed Carol to me, gathering her purse and phone. "She just ate, so she should be good for a few hours. I'll be back by noon. Where are your appointments?" The question came out more sharply than I'd intended. Clara's smile tightened just slightly. "Oh, just some errands. Post office, bank, boring adult stuff." She kissed Carol's forehead. "Be good for Grandma." I watched through the window as she pulled out of the driveway. The sedan I'd noticed last night was still parked across the street, and as Clara's car passed, it pulled out and followed at a discreet distance. They were tracking her. The federal agents were tracking her right now. Carol fussed in my arms, and I forced myself to focus on her. She was 6 months old, innocent, perfect. She had no idea her mother was driving to the post office to collect packages full of illegal drugs. She had no idea her whole world was about to collapse. I fed her, changed her, played with her toys on the living room floor, and while she napped, I did something I knew I shouldn't do. I started looking around the house. Not snooping, I told myself, just being observant. The kitchen was spotless, everything in its place. Bills stacked neatly on the counter, electric, water, credit cards. I didn't look at the amounts, but I noticed they were marked paid in Clara's handwriting. The living room revealed nothing unusual. Family photos, Carol's toys, Daniel's work boots by the door. But when I walked past the spare bedroom, the one they'd converted into Clara's office for her blog, I noticed the door was closed. It was never closed. I stood there for a long moment, Carol's baby monitor in my hand, listening to her soft breathing. Agent Foster's voice in my head. "We need your cooperation." My hand was on the doorknob before I'd made a conscious decision. The office was neat, but busy. A desk with a laptop, a ring light for photos, shelves stacked with products, diapers, bottles, organic baby food, all the things she reviewed on her blog. A filing cabinet in the corner, a printer on a side table. I walked to the desk, my heart pounding. The laptop was closed, password protected probably, but next to it was a notebook, open to a page filled with Clara's handwriting. I picked it up with shaking hands. It was a ledger. Dates, names, amounts, dollar figures that made my vision blur. K. Patterson, $340, delivered M. Walsh, $520, pending J. Brooks, $680, paid. The list went on for pages, dozens of names, thousands of dollars. Next to some entries were abbreviations: Ox 30, Zan Tu Miao, Perk 10. I wasn't naive. I knew what those meant. Oxycodone, Xanax, Percocet. My daughter-in-law was a drug dealer. I heard a car door slam outside and nearly dropped the notebook. I shoved it back onto the desk, exactly as I'd found it, and rushed out of the office, closing the door behind me. Through the front window, I saw Clara getting out of her car, carrying 2 large boxes, the packages from the post office. I was sitting on the couch with my knitting when she walked in, trying to look calm despite my racing heart. "Hey, how was she?" Clara set the boxes down by the door, her voice bright, cheerful. "Perfect angel. Napped for an hour." "Great. I'll just put these away and then we can have some tea if you want." "Actually, I should get going. I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon." Another lie. They were coming easier now. Something shifted in Clara's expression. "You've been to the doctor a lot lately. Is everything okay?" "Just routine checkups. You know how it is at my age." She studied me for a moment too long, and I had the unsettling feeling that she knew I was lying, that she could see right through me. "Well, don't forget to think about the investment opportunity. I really think it could be amazing for all of us." I gathered my things and left, feeling her eyes on my back the entire time. The sedan was still parked across the street. As I pulled away, I saw the driver on his phone, talking rapidly, reporting in. I drove straight home, locked my doors, and called Agent Foster. "Mrs. Winters, are you all right? You sound distressed." I was at their house, watching Carol, and I looked in Clara's office. The words tumbled out. "There's a notebook. A ledger with names and amounts and drug abbreviations, dozens of transactions, maybe hundreds. Did you take photos?" "No, I didn't think." I heard her coming back and I panicked. "It's okay. You did well. That information confirms what we suspected. Mrs. Winters, we're moving faster than anticipated. Mrs. Morrison picked up the packages this morning. Our agents observed her retrieving them. We have enough evidence now to move forward." "Move forward how?" "We'll be executing a search warrant within the next 48 hours. I need you to stay away from their house during that time. Do not visit. Do not call. Do not give any indication that something's about to happen." "What about Daniel? He doesn't know anything about this. It will destroy him." "We're aware of that. We'll do everything we can to minimize his exposure. But Mrs. Winters, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get very difficult. Very quickly." She was right. It got difficult faster than either of us expected. That evening, Patricia called again. She was crying. "Mom, something's wrong." I called Daniel, and Clara answered his phone. She said he couldn't talk, that he was dealing with family business. Then she said, Patricia's voice broke. She said maybe our family needs to learn to trust each other more. What does that even mean? Ice flooded my veins. "When did this happen?" 20 minutes ago. Mom, she sounded weird, angry, not like herself at all. After we hung up, I tried calling Daniel directly. It went straight to voicemail. I tried the house phone. No answer. I was still staring at my phone when it rang. Daniel's number. I answered immediately. "Daniel, are you okay?" "Mom." His voice was tight, controlled. "We need to talk. Can you come over? Now?" "Of course. What's wrong?" "Just come. Please." The drive to their house felt like moving through water. Everything was slower, heavier, wrong. The sedan was gone from across the street. That couldn't be good. Daniel answered the door. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. He'd been crying. "Come in," he said quietly. Clara was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, her expression cold and hard. This wasn't the sweet, tired mother I'd seen that morning. This was someone else entirely. "Sit down, Mom Maxine." Her voice was ice. I sat in the chair across from them, my purse clutched in my lap. Daniel wouldn't look at me. "Mom, Clara told me something today, something I can't quite believe." "Daniel," Clara started. "No, I need to hear it from her." He finally looked up at me, and the hurt in his eyes was devastating. "Did you tell the postal inspector to flag Clara's packages? Did you file some kind of complaint?" The room tilted. "What? No. I never—" "Because Tom Peterson called me today," Daniel continued, his voice shaking. "He said federal agents came to the post office this morning, asking questions about packages addressed to our house. And the only person who knew about those packages, who tried to pick them up yesterday, was you." Clara leaned forward. "He said you were there yesterday, asking questions about my deliveries, getting suspicious. Then suddenly there are federal investigators involved?" She shook her head slowly. "That's quite a coincidence, don't you think?" I couldn't get the words out. She'd twisted everything, made me the villain. "Tom said you seemed really interested in what was inside the boxes," Daniel said. "That you insisted on seeing them, on knowing the contents." "Why, Mom? Why would you do that?" "Because they asked me to pick them up. I was doing Clara a favor." "A favor?" Clara's laugh was bitter. "Or were you looking for ammunition? You never liked me, did you?" Never thought I was good enough for your precious son. That's not true, isn't it? You're always making little comments. How we spend money, how I raise Carol, how Daniel works too hard. She stood up, pacing. And now you've sicked federal agents on us because of some innocent baby supply packages. Do you have any idea what you've done? Daniel put his head in his hands. Mom, the agents questioned me at work today, in front of my boss, in front of my crew. They asked about drugs, about money, about whether I knew what was being delivered to my house. His voice broke. I could lose my job over this. We could lose everything. Daniel, listen to me. No, you listen. Clara's voice cut through. You have a choice to make right now. You can go to those federal agents and tell them you made a mistake, that you misunderstood, that there's nothing suspicious about baby supplies, that you were confused or jealous or whatever excuse you want to use. You can fix this. Or, the word came out as a whisper, or we press charges against you for harassment and filing a false report, or you never see Carol again. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Your choice, Mom Maxine. Daniel looked up at his wife, surprised. Clara, it's fair, she said firmly. She's trying to destroy our family. Why should we let her be part of it? I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, who was caught in the middle of something he didn't understand. He looked exhausted, confused, hurt, and he was looking at me like I was the problem. I need to go, I said, standing on shaking legs. Think about what I said, Clara called after me. You have 24 hours to fix this. After that, things get very unpleasant. I drove home in a daze. She'd outmaneuvered me completely, turned my son against me, made me the threat. And she'd done it without him ever knowing the truth about what was really in those boxes. At home, I found an envelope on my front porch. No stamp, no return address, just my name written in block letters. Inside was a single photograph. It was me, taken this morning through the window of Daniel's house. Standing in Clara's office, holding the notebook, clearly snooping. Below the photo, a message in the same block letters. Stay quiet, or everyone sees this. You have 24 hours. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the photo. Someone had been watching me. Someone had been inside the house, or close enough to photograph me through the window. Someone was making sure I understood the stakes. I called Agent Foster, but it went to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The agents can't help you now. Make the right choice, Maxine. Protect your family. I sat on my porch in the gathering darkness, that photograph in my lap, and realized I was completely alone. Clara had the evidence. She had my son. She had my granddaughter. And she had 24 hours to force me into silence before the federal agents moved in. The question was, what would I do when morning came? I spent that night at my kitchen table with all the lights on, too afraid to sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every car that passed on the street made me peer through the curtains. The photograph sat in front of me, a reminder of how exposed I'd become. At 6 a.m, my phone rang. An unknown number, but I answered anyway. Mrs. Winters? A man's voice, rough and unfamiliar. You don't know me, but we have a mutual problem. Clara Morrison. Who is this? Someone who's been watching this situation develop. Someone who knows what she's really doing. A pause. And someone who knows she's setting you up to take the fall. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Meet me. Riverside Diner, 7 o'clock. Come alone, don't tell anyone. If you want to protect your son, you'll be there. The line went dead. I sat there trembling, staring at my phone. It could be a trap. It could be someone working with Clara. But what if it wasn't? What if this person actually had information that could help? Agent Foster still wasn't answering her phone. I'd left 4 messages overnight. At 6:50, I grabbed my coat and headed to the diner. The Riverside Diner had been a town fixture for 50 years, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and the coffee was always hot. At 7 a.m, it was already half full with farmers and early risers. A man sat alone in the back booth, mid-40s with gray streaking his dark hair. He wore a wrinkled suit and looked like he hadn't slept in days. When I approached, He gestured for me to sit. Mrs. Winters, thank you for coming. Who are you? My name is Rick Thornton. I'm a private investigator from Billings. I've been watching Clara for 3 weeks. That's how I got the photograph of you yesterday. I'm a private investigator from Billings. He slid a business card across the table. I was hired 3 weeks ago by a woman named Kelly Patterson. The name hit me like a punch. K. Patterson. From the ledger in Clara's office. $340? Delivered. Why? Because Kelly's daughter died 2 months ago. Overdose. She was 19 years old. His voice was flat, emotionless, but his hands gripped his coffee cup so tightly his knuckles were white. Kelly knew her daughter had been buying pills online, but she didn't know from who. After she died, Kelly went through her daughter's phone and found messages. Hundreds of them, all leading back to a blog called Morris and Mama. I couldn't breathe. A 19-year-old girl. Dead. Kelly hired me to investigate. I've been watching Clara for 3 weeks, documenting everything. The packages, the deliveries, the meetings. That's how I got the photograph of you yesterday. He pulled out a tablet and showed me images. Clara meeting people in parking lots. Clara handing over small packages. Clara counting cash in her car. I've been sharing my findings with the postal inspectors. But Clara's smart, Mrs. Winters. Very smart. And she's been building an exit strategy. What kind of exit strategy? The kind where she doesn't go to prison. He leaned forward. She's been creating a paper trail that points to someone else. Financial transactions that trace back to bank accounts she doesn't control. Package deliveries to addresses that aren't hers. And yesterday, when the investigators started closing in, she pivoted. She made you the target. But I haven't done anything. You picked up packages. You have access to the house. You've been involved in their financial discussions. She made sure to ask you for an investment in front of your son. And now you've been photographed in her office, going through her private papers. He shook his head. If she plays this right, she can claim you were the one receiving and distributing the drugs, that you used her address and her name, that you manipulated her blog to recruit customers, and your son will believe her because she's his wife, the mother of his child. The diner suddenly felt too small, too hot. Nobody would believe that. Wouldn't they? You're a retired teacher on a fixed income. She'll say you needed money, that you took advantage of her home business, her online presence. She'll paint herself as the victim, the young mother who trusted her mother-in-law and got betrayed. He pulled out more documents. Look at these bank records. 3 months ago, someone opened an account in your name. It's been receiving deposits from various sources. Small amounts, irregular patterns, classic money laundering. I never opened any account. I know, but she did. Using your information, your social security number, your date of birth, all things she'd have access to as family. He spread the papers across the table. Mrs. Winters, you're being framed, systematically and carefully. And you have maybe 12 hours before the federal agents execute their search warrant and find all the evidence she's planted. I felt the walls closing in. Why are you helping me? Because Kelly Patterson's daughter is dead and Clara Morrison needs to pay for it. Not you. Not some innocent grandmother who got caught in the middle. His jaw tightened. And because I have a daughter too. If someone did this to my family, I'd want someone to fight back. What do I do? First, you stop trying to reach Agent Foster. She's not answering because she can't. The investigation has entered a critical phase. They're not communicating with civilian witnesses right now. But I have information that they won't believe without proof. Clara will have explanations for everything. She's had months to prepare. He pulled out a small device, looked like a thumb drive. This has copies of all my investigation files. Everything I've documented. You need to get this to someone who can use it. Who? There's a federal prosecutor in Billings, Janet Reeves. She specializes in drug trafficking cases. She's not part of the postal investigation, which means Clara doesn't know about her. Call her office, tell her Kelly Patterson sent you, and get her these files. She'll know what to do. I took the drive with shaking hands. What about the photograph? Clara threatened me. She's bluffing. If she releases that photo, she tips her hand too early. She needs you quiet, but not panicked. She's counting on you being too scared to act. He stood up. Don't be scared, Mrs. Winters. Be angry. And be smart. After he left, I sat in that booth for another 20 minutes, trying to steady myself. Kelly Patterson's daughter, 19 years old. How many others had there been? How many people had Clara hurt while I'd been watching Carol and bringing casseroles to family dinners? My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Mom, we need to talk. Can you come by this afternoon? Please, it's important. Another summons, another interrogation. But this time, I wasn't going in unprepared. I drove to Billings, an hour away, and found Janet Reeves's office in a federal building downtown. Her secretary tried to turn me away. Ms. Reeves was in meetings all morning, but I planted myself in a chair and refused to leave. Tell her it's about Kelly Patterson's daughter. Tell her it's about Morris and Mama. Tell her I have evidence. 30 minutes later, I was sitting in a conference room with Janet Reeves and 2 other federal attorneys, watching them review Rick Thornton's files. Janet was a woman in her 50s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. She listened to my entire story without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. Mrs. Winters, what you're describing is consistent with a sophisticated drug trafficking operation. Your daughter-in-law has been running what we call a gray market pharmacy, using legitimate-looking fronts to distribute controlled substances. Can you stop her? We can. But we need to coordinate with the postal inspectors, and we need to move carefully. If Clara suspects we're closing in, she'll destroy evidence or flee. Janet exchanged glances with her colleagues. You said she gave you a 24-hour deadline. That was last night? Yes. She wants me to tell the investigators it was all a misunderstanding. And if you don't, she'll make sure I never see my granddaughter again. And she'll press charges against me for harassment. Janet tapped her pen against her notepad. Those are empty threats legally, but emotionally they're effective. She's isolating you from your support system. She leaned forward. Mrs. Winters, I need you to do something very difficult. I need you to go to that meeting with your son this afternoon. I need you to let Clara think she's won, that you're going to cooperate. Can you do that? You want me to lie to Daniel? I want you to buy us time. We're going to accelerate the investigation timeline, but we need 48 hours to coordinate everything properly. If Clara thinks you're complying, she'll relax. She'll make mistakes. And that's when we'll move in. One of the other attorneys spoke up. We'll also get an emergency order to freeze those fraudulent bank accounts. We can prove they weren't opened by you. That will eliminate one piece of her evidence. But what about Daniel? He thinks I'm the problem. He thinks I'm trying to hurt his family. Janet's expression softened. Your son is going to go through something very traumatic in the next few days. His wife will be arrested. His home will be searched. His life will be upended. And yes, he's going to have questions about why you didn't warn him. She paused. But Mrs. Winters, if you warn him now, you give Clara time to manipulate him further, to take Carol and disappear, to destroy evidence. You have to trust that when the truth comes out, your son will understand you were protecting him. I drove back to Riverside in a fog, Janet's words echoing in my mind. 48 hours. 2 more days of lies. At 3 o'clock, I pulled into Daniel's driveway. Both their cars were there. Through the window, I could see them in the living room, waiting. I'd faced many difficult moments in my 65 years. Burying my husband, watching my children struggle through heartbreaks and failures, standing beside hospital beds and gravesides. But walking up to that door, knowing I was about to lie to my son's face, was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Clara opened the door before I could knock. She was smiling, but her eyes were cold and calculating. Mom Maxine, so glad you could make it. Come in. Daniel sat on the couch, looking exhausted. Carol was in her playpen, babbling happily, oblivious to the tension. I've been thinking, I said carefully, about what you said yesterday, about the misunderstanding with the packages. Clara's smile widened. And I think maybe I overreacted. I was confused, and Tom Peterson can be very dramatic about security protocols. I may have given the wrong impression. So you'll talk to the investigators? Tell them there's nothing suspicious? If they contact me, yes. I'll clarify that everything was just a misunderstanding. I saw Daniel's shoulders relax slightly. He wanted to believe me. He wanted this nightmare to be over. Clara, though, was watching me more carefully. And the investment we discussed, the 20,000? This was the test. She wanted to see how far I'd go. I'll think about it, but these things take time. I need to talk to my financial advisor, make sure I'm not putting my retirement at risk. Of course, I understand. But her eyes said she didn't quite believe me. You know, Mom Maxine, I'm really glad we're working this out. Family is so important, don't you think? We need to trust each other, support each other. Absolutely. Because if we can't trust family, who can we trust? She picked up Carol, holding her close. I'd hate for Carol to grow up thinking her grandmother didn't care about her. That would be so sad. The threat was clear. Play along or lose access to your granddaughter. I spent another hour there, drinking tea I didn't want, discussing baby milestones I could barely focus on. All while Clara watched me like a hawk watching a mouse, looking for any sign of deception. When I finally left, Daniel walked me to my car again. Mom, thank you. For understanding. For being reasonable. He hugged me tightly. I know Clara can be intense sometimes, but she's just protective of our family. You understand, right? I understand, I said. And it was the truest thing I'd said all day. I understood that my son was married to a criminal, that he'd been deceived and manipulated, that his entire life was built on lies, and I understood that in 48 hours, that life was going to explode. I drove home as the sun set, painting the Montana sky in shades of red and gold, beautiful and terrible at the same time. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Janet Reeves. Mrs. Winters, we've coordinated with the postal inspectors. The search warrant will be executed Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Can you make sure you're nowhere near their house at that time? Of course. And Mrs. Winters? You did the right thing today. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did. After she hung up, I sat in my car and let myself cry for the first time since this nightmare began. For Daniel, who was about to lose everything. For Carol, who'd grow up with a mother in prison. For myself, for having to watch it all happen. But mostly, I cried for Kelly Patterson's daughter, and for all the others I hadn't been able to save. Thursday morning was 36 hours away. I just had to hold on until then. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Clara. See? I knew we could work this out. Welcome back to the family, Mom Maxine. That heart emoji felt like a knife. I deleted the message and went inside, locking every door, checking every window. 2 more days. Then the truth would finally come out. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of dawn that makes you pull your coat tighter and wish you were anywhere else. I'd been awake since 4, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I couldn't drink, watching the clock tick toward 6 a.m. At 5:50, my phone rang. Janet Reeves. Mrs. Winters, the team is in position. They'll execute the warrant in 10 minutes. I want you to stay on the line with me. Don't go to the house. Don't call Daniel. Just stay where you are. What about Carol? She'll be there. She'll be so scared. There's a child welfare specialist with the team. They're trained for this. Carol will be protected. I pressed the phone to my ear and listened to Janet's breathing on the other end, both of us waiting in silence. Somewhere across town, federal agents were surrounding my son's house, preparing to tear his life apart. At 6:03, I heard it through the phone. Janet was monitoring the operation remotely, shouting, "Federal agents, search warrant," the sound of a door being breached, then Carol crying, Daniel's voice, confused and angry, and Clara screaming, "Mrs. Winters, I need to go. Stay by your phone. Someone will call you within the hour." The line went dead. I sat there in my silent house, shaking, while across town my son's world collapsed. The call came at 6:45. Agent Foster. Finally. "Mrs. Winters, we've secured the scene. We've found substantial evidence. Pills, packaging materials, shipping supplies, financial records. Everything was hidden in the basement, behind a false wall in the storage area. Where's Daniel? Is he? He's cooperative. Shocked, but cooperative. He had no knowledge of his wife's activities. We're convinced of that. And Clara? In custody. She's already asking for a lawyer." A pause. "Mrs. Winters, she's claiming you were involved, that you helped her, that you knew about everything. But you have evidence that proves otherwise." The private investigator's files, the fraudulent bank accounts. We have it all. But she's going to fight this hard. And she's going to try to use your family against you. You need to prepare yourself. Can I see Daniel? Not yet. He's being interviewed. But Mrs. Winters, he's asking for you. He wants to understand what happened. By 9 a.m., I was sitting in a federal building in Billings, in the same conference room where I'd met with Janet Reeves 2 days earlier. This time, Daniel was with me. He looked terrible. Unshaven, red-eyed, wearing the same clothes he'd slept in. When I walked in, he stood up, and for a moment we just stared at each other. Mom, his voice cracked. They're saying Clara was selling drugs. Out of our house. For months. I know. You know? He stepped back. How long have you known? Since Tuesday, when I went to pick up those packages. Tuesday? He said it like a curse. You've known for 2 days and you didn't tell me? Daniel, I wanted to. I tried. You tried? His voice rose. You sat in my house yesterday and drank tea and acted like everything was fine. Carol was there. We were all there. And you knew federal agents were going to break down our door this morning. Janet Reeves spoke up from her position at the head of the table. Mr. Winters, your mother was following our instructions. If she'd warned you, your wife would have destroyed evidence or fled. We needed— I don't care what you needed. Daniel whirled on her. That's my wife you arrested, the mother of my child, and everyone knew except me. Daniel. I kept my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. She was setting me up. She was going to make it look like I was the one distributing the drugs. He stared at me. That's insane. Clara wouldn't do that. She opened bank accounts in my name. She created paper trails that pointed to me. She took photographs of me in her office and threatened to use them unless I stayed quiet. I pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying for days. This is what she left on my porch Tuesday night. Daniel took the photograph, the one showing me holding Clara's ledger. His hands trembled as he studied it. She was protecting herself, I continued. If the investigation found her, she was going to claim I was the real criminal, that I'd manipulated her, used her blog, her home, and you would have believed her because she's your wife. I can't. He sat down heavily, pressing his palms against his eyes. This can't be real. Agent Foster entered the room, carrying a laptop. Mr. Winters, I think you need to see something. She set the laptop on the table and played a video. Security footage from various locations around town. Clara meeting people in parking lots. Clara accepting cash. Clara handing over small packages. The timestamps went back months. We've been building this case for 6 weeks, Foster explained. We started investigating after a tip from a private investigator who was hired by a woman whose daughter died from an overdose. The pills that killed her came from your wife. Daniel watched the screen, his face growing paler with each clip. Who was she? The girl who died? Her name was Amanda Patterson. She was 19. 19. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. He looked at me, his eyes devastated. Mom, I swear I didn't know. I worked all day, every day. I never saw any of this. I know, sweetheart. Nobody thinks you were involved. But I should have known. I should have seen something. He put his head in his hands. How could I live with someone and not know they were doing this? Janet answered, her tone gentler now. Because she was very careful. She operated while you were at work. She used her blog as a cover, made everything look legitimate. She was sophisticated and deliberate. This wasn't amateur hour. What happens now? Daniel asked. To Carol? To me? Your daughter is with Child Services temporarily, just until we can verify your home is safe. You'll get her back within 24 hours. As for you, you're not being charged with anything. But you'll need to testify about what you knew and when you knew it. I didn't know anything. Then that's what you'll testify. Daniel looked at me again, and I saw something break behind his eyes. Mom, I'm sorry for how I treated you Tuesday night, for believing Clara when she said you were the problem. You didn't know. I should have trusted you. You're my mother. You've never lied to me, never tried to hurt me, and I chose to believe her over you. He wiped his eyes roughly. I'm so sorry. I reached across the table and took his hand. We're going to get through this. All of us. Together. But even as I said it, I knew the hardest part was still coming. That afternoon, I was finally allowed to go home. Daniel came with me, unable to face his house with its broken door and federal agents cataloging evidence. We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd raised him, and I made him tea he didn't drink. Clara's lawyer called me, he said quietly. They want me to post bail, $200,000. You don't have that kind of money. They want me to remortgage the house, use it as collateral. He laughed bitterly. My wife wants me to risk our home to get her out of jail for selling drugs out of that same home. What did you say? I hung up. He stared at his hands. I don't even know who she is anymore. Was any of it real? Did she ever love me, or was I just convenient? A cover story? The hard-working husband who was never home? Daniel, she asked me for that investment for you. $20,000. Was that part of it too? Was she trying to get money from you to fund her operation? I hadn't thought of it that way, but it made horrible sense. Probably. And I almost pressured you into it. I almost helped her steal from my own mother. He stood up abruptly, pacing. How do I explain this to Carol when she's older? How do I tell her that her mother is in prison for drug trafficking? That she killed people? You tell her the truth. Age-appropriate truth, but truth. And you raise her to be better. To make better choices. My phone rang. Patricia calling from Seattle. I'd texted her earlier to let her know what had happened. Mom, I just saw the news. It's all over social media. Clara's blog followers are posting about it. Some of them are defending her, saying she was helping people the system failed. Patricia sounded furious. Can you believe that? She killed someone's daughter and they're calling her a hero? People believe what they want to believe. Is Daniel okay? Is Carol? Daniel's here with me. Carol's in protective custody temporarily. She's safe. I'm getting on a plane. I'll be there tomorrow morning. After she hung up, Daniel looked at me. I need to tell you something. About yesterday. After you left. My stomach tightened. What happened? Clara was different. After you agreed to cooperate, to talk to the investigators, she got confident, almost gleeful. He swallowed hard. She told me we were going to be fine, that she'd handled everything, that some problems just needed to be managed properly. Did she say what she meant? No. But Mom, the way she said it was like she was talking about you, like you were a problem she'd managed. His voice broke. I think if you hadn't gone to those federal prosecutors, if you'd actually tried to cover for her, she would have made sure you took the fall. All of it. And I would have helped her do it because I believed her. We sat there in silence for a long moment, both of us processing the enormity of what had almost happened. There's something else, Daniel said quietly. The agents found another ledger, not the one you saw in her office. This one was hidden with the drugs. It had more names, more transactions. And Mom, one of the names was yours. What? She'd created fake transactions showing you buying from her. Dates, amounts, everything. She was building a complete false history. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. If she'd gotten away with it, if they'd arrested you instead of her, that ledger would have been the evidence that convicted you. The room felt too small suddenly. I stood up, walked to the window, tried to breathe. Clara hadn't just been protecting herself. She'd been actively planning my destruction. While I'd been watching Carol, bringing casseroles, being family, she'd been forging documents that would send me to prison. How long? I asked. How long was she planning this? According to the dates in the ledger, at least 3 months. Since January. Since right after Robert's estate settled. Since I'd inherited his life insurance. Since I'd mentioned to Daniel that I was comfortable financially, that I'd invested the money wisely. She'd been planning to frame me, steal my savings, and let me rot in prison. All while smiling at me across the dinner table. My phone rang again. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Winters? This is Kelly Patterson. The investigator, Rick Thornton, gave me your number. I hope that's okay. The mother of the girl who died. My throat tightened. Of course. I wanted to thank you for helping catch her, for doing what I couldn't do. Her voice was thick with emotion. Amanda would have been 20 next month. We were going to take her to New York, see a Broadway show. She loved theater. I'm so sorry for your loss. They tell me Clara had been selling to her for 8 months, that she targeted vulnerable young people through social media, made them think she was helping them. Kelly's voice hardened. I want to testify. When this goes to trial, I want to look her in the face and tell her what she took from me. You'll get that chance. After we hung up, I looked at Daniel. He'd been listening to my side of the conversation, and now he looked ill. That could have been Carol, he whispered. If Clara had been caught later, if Carol had grown up with her, learned from her, that could have been our daughter in 20 years. But it won't be, because you'll raise her differently. Better. Will I? He looked at me desperately. How do I know I won't miss the signs again? How do I trust myself after this? You learn. You grow. You accept help from people who love you. I sat beside him. And you remember that you're not alone. You have family. Real family. Not the kind that manipulates and betrays, but the kind that fights for each other. The sun was setting outside, casting long shadows across my living room. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more interviews, more painful revelations. But tonight, my son was safe under my roof, and my granddaughter was protected, and the woman who'd tried to destroy us all was behind bars. Mom? Daniel's voice was small, like he was a child again. Can I stay here tonight? I can't go back to that house. Not yet. Of course. This is your home. It always has been. We sat together in the gathering darkness, two people trying to understand how to rebuild a life from ruins. But at least we were rebuilding together. And that was something Clara's manipulation could never take away. 3 months later, I stood in a courthouse in Billings, watching Clara Morrison being led into the courtroom in handcuffs. She'd lost weight, her blonde hair now pulled back severely, her expensive clothes replaced with a standard orange jumpsuit. But her eyes were the same, calculating, cold, searching the room for weaknesses. When her gaze found mine, something flickered across her face. Anger, maybe. Or perhaps surprise that I was still standing, still fighting, still here. I didn't look away. Daniel sat beside me, Patricia on his other side. Carol was with a babysitter, safe and innocent. Too young to remember any of this. That was a mercy, at least. The proceedings had been long and complicated. Clara's lawyer had tried every angle, claiming entrapment, questioning the legality of the searches, attempting to suppress evidence. But the case against her was overwhelming. The packages, the ledgers, the bank records, the testimony from dozens of buyers, and the fraudulent accounts she'd opened in my name, which had been the final nail in her defense. Judge Nellie Dixon, a stern woman in her 60s, reviewed the plea agreement with clinical precision. Mrs. Morrison, you are pleading guilty to conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, mail fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. Do you understand these charges? Yes, Your Honor. Clara's voice was quiet, defeated. Her lawyer had finally convinced her that a trial would only result in a longer sentence. And you understand that in exchange for your guilty plea and cooperation in identifying your suppliers, the prosecution is recommending 15 years in federal prison with possibility of parole after 10? Yes, Your Honor. 15 years. Carol would be 16 when her mother got out. A whole childhood without her. The judge looked up from her papers. Before I accept this plea, does anyone wish to speak? Kelly Patterson stood from the back of the courtroom. She'd driven 5 hours to be here, carrying a photograph of her daughter. Your Honor, my name is Kelly Patterson. Clara Morrison sold the drugs that killed my daughter, Amanda. Her voice shook, but held strong. Amanda was 19 years old. She was studying theater at college. She had her whole life ahead of her. She started buying pills from Mrs. Morrison after finding her blog, thinking she was getting help for anxiety her doctor wouldn't treat. Within 6 months, she was addicted. Within 8 months, she was dead. Clara stared at the table in front of her, refusing to look up. Mrs. Morrison targeted vulnerable young people, Kelly continued. She used social media, mommy blogs, and the appearance of legitimacy to lure them in. She didn't care who she hurt as long as she made money. My daughter was just one of many. Kelly's voice broke. I want the court to know that these weren't victimless crimes. Every pill she sold, every package she sent, had the potential to destroy a family. Mine was destroyed. Others were too. The judge nodded solemnly. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. Does anyone else wish to speak?" I stood up. Daniel tried to stop me, putting a hand on my arm, but I gently moved it aside. "Your Honor, my name is Maxine Winters. I'm Clara Morrison's former mother-in-law." The courtroom went quiet. Even Clara looked up now, meeting my eyes for the first time. "I'm not here to defend her. What she did was unconscionable. But I am here to speak about the other victims, the family members who were deceived, manipulated, and nearly destroyed alongside her." I took a breath. Clara didn't just sell drugs. She systematically planned to frame me for her crimes. She opened bank accounts in my name, created false transaction records, and threatened me into silence. She would have let me go to prison for her crimes without a second thought. Daniel's hand found mine, squeezing tight. But I also want the court to know that I'm speaking today not for revenge, but for truth. My son, Daniel, had no knowledge of his wife's crimes. He worked honest hours to provide for his family while she operated behind his back. My granddaughter, Carol, is innocent, and I want it on record that this family, what's left of it, will heal. We will rebuild. And we will make sure Carol grows up knowing the difference between right and wrong, between manipulation and love, between the easy path and the right one. I looked directly at Clara. "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger would only let you win. You tried to destroy me, but you failed. You tried to destroy my family, but we're still standing, and we'll still be standing long after you're just a painful memory." I sat down, my heart pounding. Patricia put her arm around my shoulders. Judge Holbrook studied me for a long moment, then turned to Clara. "Mrs. Morrison, do you have anything to say?" For the first time, Clara's composure cracked. Tears streamed down her face, though whether they were genuine or performative, I couldn't tell. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was desperate. We had so much debt, and Daniel was working so hard, and I just wanted to help. It started small, just helping a few people who couldn't afford their prescriptions. Then it grew, and I couldn't stop. I couldn't—" Her voice broke. "I never meant for anyone to die. I never meant to hurt anyone." The judge's expression didn't soften. "Mrs. Morrison, intent is not the same as impact. Your actions had devastating consequences. You didn't just hurt people, you killed them. You destroyed families, and you attempted to frame an innocent woman for your crimes." She paused. "I'm accepting your guilty plea. You are hereby sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 10 years. You will also be required to pay restitution to the victims' families, the amount to be determined by the court." The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Clara was led away, her lawyer promising to file appeals, though we all knew they'd go nowhere. The evidence was too strong, the crimes too clear. Outside the courthouse, spring sunshine felt like a benediction. Daniel stood on the steps, breathing deeply, like he'd been underwater for months and was finally surfacing. "It's really over," he said. "She can't hurt us anymore." "The legal part is over," Patricia corrected gently. "But healing takes time." She was right. The past 3 months had been brutal. Daniel had to sell the house. No one wanted to live in a place that had been a drug distribution center. He and Carol had moved in with me temporarily, my too-quiet house suddenly full of life again. Midnight feedings, cartoons in the morning, the chaos of raising a baby. It was exhausting. It was wonderful. Daniel had started therapy, working through the betrayal and manipulation. He'd joined a support group for families affected by addiction crimes. Slowly, painfully, he was rebuilding his sense of self. Carol, at 9 months old, was thriving. She'd taken her first steps in my living room last week, and Daniel had cried with joy and grief. Joy at witnessing it, grief that he'd almost missed these moments because of Clara's lies. We drove back to Riverside in Patricia's rental car, the three of us mostly quiet, processing. When we pulled into my driveway, Daniel's truck was already there. He'd driven separately that morning, needing the time alone. Inside, the babysitter reported that Carol had been perfect. Daniel paid her, thanked her, and then gathered his daughter in his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world, because she was. That evening, I made dinner for all of us. Patricia, Daniel, Carol, and my oldest son, Marcus, who'd driven down from Great Falls for the occasion. We sat around my dining table, the one Robert had built 40 years ago, and we were loud and messy and alive. This was family. Real family. Not the pretty picture Clara had tried to create with her filtered photos and manufactured perfect moments, but the complicated, difficult, beautiful reality of people who chose each other every day. After dinner, while Daniel put Carol to bed upstairs, Patricia helped me wash dishes. "You know what amazes me?" she said, scrubbing a pot. "How you stayed calm through all of it. I would have lost my mind." I did lose my mind, several times. You just weren't there to see it. But you didn't break. You could have. When she threatened you, when she turned Daniel against you, when you saw those X-ray images, any of those moments could have destroyed you. But they didn't. I dried a plate thoughtfully. I think that's what being 65 teaches you. That you're stronger than you think. That you can survive things you never imagined surviving. Your generation is so focused on avoiding pain, on staying comfortable. But my generation, we learned that sometimes you have to walk through fire to get to the other side. That's very wise, Mom. That's very old, I corrected with a smile. There's a difference. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on my back porch with a cup of tea, looking out at the Montana night sky. Stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds on velvet. My phone buzzed. A text from Kelly Patterson. "Thank you for speaking today. Amanda would have liked you." I texted back. I wish I could have known her. The truth was, I'd been thinking a lot about Amanda Patterson, about the 19-year-old girl who'd trusted the wrong person and paid with her life, about all the other victims Clara had left in her wake. Some dead, some addicted, some simply hurt and betrayed. Could I have stopped it sooner? If I'd been more observant, more suspicious, more willing to believe my daughter-in-law capable of evil? Maybe. But I'd also learned that hindsight was a luxury, not a tool. I'd done the best I could with the information I had, and when I'd finally understood the truth, I'd acted. That had to be enough. The back door opened, and Daniel stepped out, Carol's baby monitor in his hand. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. "Too much thinking." He sat in the chair beside me. "Mom, I need to tell you something. I've been waiting for the right time, and I think this is it." My heart clenched. "What is it?" "I want to start a foundation, in Amanda Patterson's name, for families affected by drug trafficking and addiction, support groups, legal assistance, counseling, all the things we needed and didn't have." He looked at me. "And I want you to help me run it." I stared at him. "Daniel, I don't know anything about running a foundation, but you know about surviving, about fighting back, about not letting the bad guys win." He smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached his eyes. "Clara tried to use you as a pawn. I think we should turn that around. Use what happened to us to help other people." It was a beautiful idea. Ambitious, probably difficult, definitely time-consuming, but also meaningful. A way to transform tragedy into purpose. "What about your work? Your contracting business?" "I'm cutting back my hours. I've hired another guy to help. I missed too much of Carol's early months because I was working constantly. I won't make that mistake again." He paused. "Clara always said I worked too much. Turns out that was one true thing she said, even if her reasons for saying it were wrong." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the night sounds. Crickets, distant traffic, the wind through the trees. "Your father would be proud of you," I said finally. "Of the man you've become. The father you are." "I hope so. Though honestly, I think I'm more trying to be like you." Daniel looked at me. "You're the strongest person I know, Mom. You faced down federal agents, a criminal daughter-in-law, threats, manipulation, and you never stopped fighting for what was right. That's the example I want to follow." My eyes stung with tears. "I just did what needed to be done. That's what makes it remarkable. You didn't make a big deal about it. You didn't ask for credit or recognition. You just kept moving forward, step by step, doing the next right thing." He squeezed my hand. Carol's going to grow up hearing stories about her grandmother who wouldn't back down, who couldn't be intimidated or broken, who proved that wisdom and integrity beat manipulation every time. Well, wisdom and integrity with a little help from federal prosecutors. Daniel laughed, real and genuine. It was a sound I'd missed desperately. Inside, Carol started fussing through the monitor. Daniel stood immediately, always the attentive father. "I've got her," I said. "You've been on baby duty all day. Take a break." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Go relax. Maybe call that woman from your support group, the one you mentioned last week." He blushed. "Mom, I'm just saying, eventually you'll want to date again. And she sounds nice. A librarian with a 6-year-old daughter. Much better choice than the last one." He laughed again. Way too soon for that conversation. But I'll think about it. Someday. I climbed the stairs to Carol's room, this room that used to be Daniel's, now transformed with a crib in pastel colors and stuffed animals. Carol stood in her crib, tears on her cheeks, arms reaching for me. "Hey, sweet girl. Bad dream?" I picked her up, and she immediately settled against my shoulder, her little hand clutching my shirt. We rocked in the chair by the window, and I hummed the same lullaby I'd sung to Daniel 32 years ago. Through the window, I could see my whole property, the garden I'd planted with Robert, the fence he'd built, the trees we'd watched grow from saplings. This house held decades of memories, and now it was creating new ones. Carol's breathing evened out as she fell back asleep, but I held her a little longer, thinking about the journey we'd all been on, the packages that started it all, the secrets uncovered, the threats weathered, the family that emerged stronger on the other side. Clara had underestimated me. She'd seen a 65-year-old widow and assumed I'd be easy to manipulate, easy to frame, easy to destroy. She'd bet everything on my fear, my confusion, my desire to avoid conflict. She'd been wrong about all of it, because 65 years of life had taught me things that no amount of clever manipulation could overcome. I'd learned that patience was a weapon. That wisdom meant knowing when to act and when to wait. That real strength wasn't about force or intimidation. It was about refusing to be broken, even when everything seemed lost. I looked down at Carol's sleeping face, so peaceful and innocent. She'd grow up without her mother, and that would hurt. But she'd grow up with a father who loved her fiercely, an aunt who'd move mountains for her, uncles who'd teach her to be strong, and a grandmother who'd show her that age was power, not weakness. And maybe someday, when she was old enough to understand, I'd tell her this story, not to frighten her, but to teach her, to show her that the world could be dangerous and deceptive, but that courage and integrity and family could overcome anything. That truth always wins in the end, even when it takes a while to emerge. That villains don't always look like villains. Sometimes they look like smiling young mothers with perfect hair and mommy blogs. And that heroes don't always look like heroes either. Sometimes they look like ordinary grandmothers who simply refuse to let the bad guys win. I put Carol back in her crib, kissed her forehead, and went back downstairs. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There always were challenges. But tonight, in this house full of family, with justice served and truth triumphant, I allowed myself to feel what I'd been too busy to feel for months. Pride. In myself, in Daniel, in all of us. Relief. That we'd survived, that Carol was safe, that the nightmare was over, and hope. That tomorrow would be better than today, and that we'd face it together. I made one more cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table, the same table where this whole thing had started with Tom's phone call about suspicious packages. Life had a funny way of circling back on itself. My phone buzzed. A text from Janet Reeves. "Congratulations on today. You did good, Maxine. You saved your family." I smiled and typed back, "We saved each other. That's what families do." Outside, the Montana night stretched on, full of stars and possibility. Inside, my house was full of the people I loved, sleeping safely under my roof. Clara Morrison was in prison, where she belonged. And I was exactly where I belonged too. Right here, in this life I'd fought so hard to protect. At 65, I'd learned my most important lesson yet, that the battles we fight aren't always the ones we choose, but how we fight them defines who we are. I'd fought with patience, wisdom, courage, and integrity. And I'd won. Not because I was stronger or smarter or more powerful than my opponent, but because I'd refused to compromise my values, even when it would have been easier, because I'd trusted the right people at the right time, and because I'd believed, even in the darkest moments, that truth and justice would prevail. They had. And now, finally, I could rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, I had peace. And that was enough. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.